So we're going to learn how to crochet a cat. This is a simple cat by making a square of crochet and sewing it into this lovely little cat shape. This is my cat. So step one, I'm going to crochet a square, which you may have already done. And you'll notice I have an extra tail here because I need to make the cat's tail. My other supplies I need are a length of yarn, my crochet hook to add the tail, a sewing needle, and some stuffing. So I have some stuffing too. Okay, so these are the supplies I need to crochet my cat. And if you already have a completed square, you can add a tail later, but if you still have a tail coming from your square, you're going to want to chain about 10 or 12 stitches off the edge to make yourself a nice little tail. So it's easier to sew on a tail afterward than it is to add a tail after you started sewing. I did about 12 stitches there, and then I'm going to just tie off with a crochet knot. So this is my square, and if we look at our cat, this is the bottom of the cat, and this is the top of the cat, and it's got this general shape going on here, little cat like. So I'm going to take my thread and put it into my hook, my sewing needle, and I'm going to sew up the bottom of my square. And you want to sew through the bottom here to make a rounded base. You're going to leave this part out. And so I just sew across the bottom, skipping every other stitch. I'm going to pull through a little, sew across that bottom. So I've left an inch or two on this side, and I've sewn it across the bottom, and then I'm going to cinch it tight. That's the next step. So I'm going to tie it tighter, and you can see the bottom is now starting to cinch together. I'm going to pull it as tight as I can. And tie a knot. Okay. And you can use this tail, this little tail here, to close up this base a little more if you need to, if you can tie this tight and not the strongest. And then the next step is this is our bottom, so we want to make the body. So we're going to sew from rows 12. This is a square that's 12 rows. If you have a square that's more rows, you want to do 2/3 of the square. So this is what I'm going to reserve for my head, and this is going to be my body part. So I'm going to sew up through the body, and you'll notice I'm using somewhat matching color, but somewhat like it's an off-white, so you can see it better, but hopefully you're using a color match worsted weight yarn to use for sewing, so it's not as obvious that you've sewn it together. And I'm just going to sew up through the center of that seam, just making sure that the stitches are catching, because I'm going to want to stuff it, so I don't want the yarn to be as obvious. Unlike the bottom, we're not cinching it, but we do want to make sure we're pulling tight to make sure the stitches are not going to be showing. So I think that's my halfway, my 2/3 point there, not halfway. And there I have my body. I'm going to tie a knot here, like I did to secure the bottom. And I'm just tying a general knot because I'm going to cover this area. So you can see I have this seam here now. It's not coming apart. So this is the top half of my top half. This will become my head. This is going to become the body. Now I'm going to open it and put a little bit of stuff inside. I'm going to just stuff down there. It's got about a palm full of stuffing, a tiny bit more. Okay, that's that area. So the next thing I want to do is separate the head from my body. I don't want this rectangle anymore. So I'm going to wrap the yarn around the neck. I'm going to pull it tight to cut off that head. I could have probably stuffed mine a little more. So I pulled it tight. And you can see I now have a collar that separates the body from the head. I'm going to hook my yarn through the body and tie another knot. And then I'm going to weave my needle back in, so that's knots a little bit inside. Not as obvious, right? That knot's kind of hidden in there. And you can see I now have body, tail, head. Next, I'm going to sew up the head, just like we did with the body, closing it. I'm going to knot it. And I'm going to add a little more stuffing. Can't have an empty head there. Okay. That's all the stuffing I need, maybe a little extra. And now we have body and an open head. We have to sew the head next. So personally, I want this seam to be in the back because it's ugly, so I like to hide it. So I'm going to close this in the center. You might not mind, you might close on a side, but I'm going to close in the center because I like to hide the seam. And I'm going to sew through the top. So I'm going to grab a stitch across from my seam and go through it and go back, grabbing stitches across the center. So I'm closing it perpendicular to the other seam. I have an extra stitch here. I'm going to sew my way back down these stitches to make them extra secure. And do the other side of the seam, since I started in the center. And once we have the center seam, we need to pull the head down. So right now we have a large body and a very large head. And if we look at this cat, there's a little bit of a divot in the center there to make some ears. So you're going to grab this seam. You're going to go through it once, over the edge, and stab your hook down towards the neck and out the throat. So you can see I said hook, but I meant sewing needle. So you see the sewing needle going through the top of the head and out the front. And you're going to pull on it tight. And you can see some ears forming there. Got some nice pointy ears there because I'm pulling tightly. And you can pull it as tight as you want. And you're going to tie a little knot. Tie a knot there. I'm trying not to let go because if I let go, the ears will come uncinched. You can see now I have head, ears, body, loose tail. I'm going to pull this yarn back up through the top of the head. I'm going to repeat that down the other side just to make it extra secure since I have enough yarn. Pulling it tight again. And this tail is pretty much finished. So I'm going to knot it into the body. And I'm going to sew it inside by stabbing it through. Let's hide my tail. Stab that tail in. Okay, so this is the back of my cat. You can see this center seam. This is the front of my cat. And I still have 2 loose tails. So I'm going to check if my bottom needs to be sewn at all. I could use a stitch or 2. I'm going to just put this tail across the bottom. That kind of closes up the tail, the bottom of the cat a little. And I can just weave this end in as well. It's amigurumi, so it can eat the tail. This can just be stuffed inside. So I pulled it in. Got it off. So that's cat, body, tail. So now I'm going to take this tail and I'm going to wrap my cat tail around its body and sew it in to hold it in place. So you can have your cat tail come from this direction. You can have your cat tail come from that direction. But either way, you got to sew it to its feet. So you're going to sew it down. You can have it twist so that the braid is up or not. And I've attached my tail. So sitting upright, my cat has a nice tail like this, you can see. And if I wanted to, I've run out of my sewing yarn, but I could make a suggestion of little paws. I could cinch this front area together a little. This is easier with the thinner yarn, but since I currently have thicker yarn, you could sew it a little more cinched there. Create that suggestion that the cat is kneeling on its paws, like a little statue. And again, I'm weaving in that tail. Just gonna poke it in so it doesn't come out of my cat. Okay. So I have a head with ears, a neck, a body, the faint suggestion of little paws, and a tail. So this is the top of my cat, this is the back of my cat, this is the front of my cat. And you can make the collar a different color. This is my plain cat, but you'll see on my cat, I have a gold moon. Because this isn't any old cat, this is a nerdy pop culture cat. So now I'm going to grab my gold yarn and sew the brim of my cap. So I've grabbed my gold yarn and I need to make this moon crescent on the top of my cat's head. So I'm going to start in the top right corner and work my way down and across to the left corner. I'm going to hook the starting yarn just up into that top corner, just stab it in there, and leave a little bit of tail behind to weave in, and I'm going to loop it around the stitch that I hooked it into. Then I'm going to go down and join another stitch down here. Again, loop it around, moving across the head to the next stitch. And then looping it around. And then ending up at the top of the head up here. And since the yarn I'm using is so thin, I'm actually going to go back across to just reinforce that moon here. Just to make it a little thicker. So I got this moon shape, and I just got to stab my tails in. One tail woven in, the other tail, I just gotta weave that one in. I'm just weaving in by pulling my sewing needle through the head far enough along that the tail won't come with it. So this is my cat, here's my friend, here's my third friend. So now I have 3 cats, put them in this cute order, and you can go make a cat from a square and make it a little nerdy too. Thank you.